Before you press play, take one breath and notice how tight your shoulders already are. Most people carry tension so constantly, they've forgotten what it feels like to fully let go. This isn't just music, this is 528 Hz, a frequency studied for its calming effect on the nervous system, used for centuries in sacred sound traditions to guide the body back into balance. You have 6 minutes and 17 seconds. That's it. No effort, no technique, nothing to get right. Just stay present and let your body do what it already knows how to do. Release, soften, and come home to itself. If you felt even a small shift while listening, a deeper breath, a looser jaw, a quieter mind, that's your sign to hit like right now, because it helps this frequency reach someone else who needs this reset just as much as you did. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next healing session. And before you go, leave a comment below. Tell us where you're listening from and how your body feels right now compared to when you pressed play. This space is becoming a global circle of stillness, and your voice is part of it. See you in the next session. There is a sound beneath every sound you have ever heard, a vibration underlying every cell in your body, every heartbeat, every breath you have taken since the moment you first arrived in this world. Most of the time, this vibration remains hidden beneath the noise of daily life. The deadlines, the notifications, the endless mental chatter that fills nearly every waking hour. But every so often, something interrupts that noise, a moment of stillness, a sound that seems to reach somewhere deeper than your ears. This is one of those moments. Over the next 6 minutes and 17 seconds, you are being invited into a frequency that has been studied, discussed, and experienced by musicians, sound therapists, meditation practitioners, and seekers around the world. 528ers, sometimes referred to as the frequency of transformation, sometimes called the love frequency, sometimes simply known as the tone that seems to soften something in the body that words alone cannot reach. Before we go further, it's worth being honest and grounded about what this frequency is and what it isn't. 528 Hz is a specific pitch, one of several tones associated with what's known as the solfeggio scale, an ancient set of musical frequencies said to have been used in early sacred music, including Gregorian chants, long before modern tuning standards were established. While rigorous scientific consensus on the specific healing claims tied to solfeggio frequencies remains limited, what is well documented is the broader, well-researched impact that calming music, rhythmic sound, and intentional listening can have on the nervous system, lowering heart rate, easing muscle tension, slowing brain activity into more relaxed states, and creating the physiological conditions under which the body naturally shifts out of stress and into repair. Whatever your personal belief about the deeper metaphysical claims surrounding 528ers, the practice you are about to engage in draws from something real: the profound, well-established relationship between sound, breath, nervous system regulation, and the body's own intelligence for healing when given the right conditions. To understand why this works, it helps to understand what happens in your body during a typical day. From the moment you wake, your nervous system is largely operating from a state that researchers call sympathetic activation, commonly known as fight or flight. This isn't a flaw in your design. It's a survival mechanism, finely tuned over millions of years of evolution to keep you alert, responsive, and ready to react to danger. The problem is not that this system exists. The problem is that in modern life, it rarely gets the chance to fully switch off. Notifications arrive like small alarms throughout the day. Deadlines create low-grade, constant urgency. Even rest, for many people, has become another task to optimize rather than a genuine release. Over time, this chronic activation doesn't just affect your mood, it affects digestion, sleep quality, immune function, emotional regulation, and the clarity of your thinking. Your body, quite literally, forgets what true rest feels like because it is rarely given the opportunity to fully experience it. This is where frequency-based practices like the one you're about to engage in offer something valuable, regardless of where you stand on their more mystical interpretations. A steady, low, resonant tone, particularly one without jarring melodic shifts, sudden volume changes, or unpredictable rhythm, signals safety to the nervous system in a way that very few other stimuli can. It tells the deep, ancient part of your brain, the part that is always scanning for threat, that it is safe to stand down, even if just for a few minutes. As you listen to this frequency, you may notice something interesting happening in your body even before your conscious mind fully catches up. A slight loosening in the shoulders, a softening around the jaw, which for many people carries tension without them even realizing it. A deeper, slower quality to the breath without deliberately trying to breathe differently at all. These are not imagined effects, they are measurable, documented physiological responses to calming auditory input, and they form the foundation of why sound-based practices have been used across nearly every culture on Earth. From indigenous drumming ceremonies to Tibetan singing bowls to the structured chant work of early Christian monasteries. The through line across all of these traditions, separated by geography and centuries, is the recognition that sound is not simply something we hear. It is something we feel, something that moves through tissue, through bone, through the subtle electrical activity of the brain itself. When we talk about a frequency shifting, we are talking about this very real, well-documented capacity for sound to alter internal states, often more quickly and more completely than willpower or conscious effort alone ever could. Now, let's speak plainly about what this particular window of time, 6 minutes and 17 seconds, is designed to offer you. It is not a magic reset button. It will not erase years of accumulated stress in a single sitting, and any practice that claims total transformation in mere minutes deserves healthy skepticism. What this session offers instead is something more modest and in many ways more powerful: an opportunity. A small, protected window in which your nervous system is given full permission to stand down, even briefly, from the vigilance it carries throughout most of your day. Within that small window, shifts do happen, not because the frequency forces anything upon you, but because your body, given even a few minutes of genuine safety and stillness, tends to move naturally toward regulation and repair. This is not mysticism, it is basic physiology. The parasympathetic nervous system, often called the rest and digest system, activates readily once the perceived threat level drops, and it brings with it a cascade of beneficial processes: slower heart rate, improved digestion, reduced inflammation markers, and a subjective sense of calm that many people describe as coming home to themselves after having been, in some sense, quietly on edge for longer than they even realized. As you continue into this listening experience, I invite you to release any pressure to do the practice correctly. There is no performance here. You do not need to visualize anything specific, force any emotion, or manufacture a particular experience. Your only task, if it can even be called a task, is to allow. Allow your shoulders to drop a little further than they were a moment ago. Allow your breath to move at whatever pace feels natural, without controlling it. Allow your mind to wander if it wants to, without judgment, gently returning your attention to the sound whenever you notice you've drifted. This gentle, non-forceful quality of attention is, in itself, a subtle form of nervous system training, teaching your body over repeated practice. That stillness does not need to be earned through effort. That peace is not something you have to fight your way into, but something that becomes more accessible each time you simply make space for it. Many longtime practitioners of frequency-based meditation describe an interesting phenomenon: that the first few times they engage in this kind of practice, very little seems to happen. A slight relaxation, perhaps, but nothing dramatic. Yet with repetition, something shifts. The body begins to recognize the frequency, the pattern, the ritual of stillness, and responds more quickly and more deeply each time. This is not unlike the way a familiar piece of music can instantly transport you back to a particular time and feeling, simply through repeated association. In the same way, your nervous system can learn to associate this frequency with safety, with release, with permission to soften, and that association deepens every time you return to it. As we move into the next chapter, we'll explore what many describe as the emotional and energetic layer of this practice. The subtle patterns, old emotional residues, and blocked energy that frequency work is often used to gently loosen and release, along with practical guidance for deepening this practice beyond these 6 minutes and into the fabric of daily life. For now, simply stay present. Let the sound hold you. There is nowhere else you need to be, and nothing else you need to do, except allow yourself, just for these few minutes, to rest. As this frequency continues to move through you, something quieter begins to happen beneath the surface, something that often goes unnoticed in the first few minutes but becomes more apparent the longer you allow yourself to stay present. When the nervous system finally downshifts out of its habitual state of alertness, it doesn't simply pause. It begins almost automatically to process what it hasn't had the space to process before. Think of it like a room that has been slightly cluttered for a long time, not because anyone was careless, but because there was never a quiet enough moment to tidy it. Sound-based practices like this one often create exactly that kind of quiet moment. Emotions that were pushed aside during a hectic morning. Tension that was absorbed during a difficult conversation but never fully released. Old patterns of worry that have become so familiar they no longer even register as worry. They just feel like background noise, like static you've learned to live with. In the stillness created by this frequency, some of that static has room to finally surface, not in an overwhelming way, but often as small, fleeting sensations. A subtle wave of sadness that passes through without explanation, an unexpected sigh that feels deeper than usual, or simply a sense of something settling. The way dust settles in a room once the movement finally stops. None of this needs to be analyzed or understood in the moment. You are not required to figure out where a feeling comes from in order to let it pass through and soften. In fact, many people find that the more they try to intellectually pin down every sensation, the more elusive genuine release becomes. This practice invites something different, a kind of trust in the body's own intelligence, its own timing, its own way of knowing what needs to move and when. This is where the language of energy becomes useful, even for those who approach these ideas with a scientific or skeptical mindset. Whether you think of it literally as energetic blockage or simply as accumulated physiological tension and unprocessed emotional residue, the experience described by so many who engage in frequency work is remarkably consistent, a felt sense of something loosening, something opening, something that had been held tightly for so long that its absence, once released, feels almost unfamiliar. Practitioners of subtle energy traditions often describe this as blocked energy moving through the body's meridian pathways or energy centers, sometimes releasing as physical sensations. A slight tingling in the hands, warmth spreading across the chest, a lightness in the head, or even minor twitches as tension exits areas where it had been unconsciously stored, often for years. You do not need to force any of these sensations to occur, and their absence does not mean the practice isn't working. Everybody processes differently, and for some, the shift is quiet and internal rather than physically dramatic. What matters far more than the specific sensations you notice is the simple, consistent act of returning to this space of stillness again and again, allowing your system to build familiarity and trust with the process over time. There is also something worth naming honestly here. Many people carry a subtle but persistent belief, often without realizing it, that rest must be earned, that stillness is a luxury reserved for after the to-do list is finished, after the goals are achieved, after some future point when things finally calm down. This belief, so common in modern life, quietly reinforces a cycle where the nervous system rarely gets true permission to fully soften, because on some level, the mind keeps insisting there isn't time, or that relaxing now would somehow be irresponsible. Frequency practices like this one gently interrupt that belief, not through argument, but through direct experience. By giving yourself these few minutes, without multitasking, without checking the time, without treating this as one more item to check off a list, you are quietly teaching your nervous system something important, that rest does not need to be earned through exhaustion. That peace is available now, not only after every obligation has been met. This shift, small as it may seem in a single session, can ripple outward in meaningful ways over time, influencing how quickly you recover from stress, how present you feel in daily interactions, and how much resilience you carry into challenges that would have once felt overwhelming. It's also worth addressing the layer of manifestation and subconscious reprogramming often associated with 528 Hz and similar frequency work. Since so many people come to these practices seeking not just relaxation, but genuine change in their outer circumstances. The connection here, again, can be understood without needing to accept anything overly mystical. A nervous system that spends most of its time in stress and vigilance tends to make decisions from a place of scarcity, urgency, and fear, reacting rather than choosing, grasping rather than allowing. A nervous system that has practiced, even briefly and repeatedly, the experience of safety and internal coherence tends to approach decisions, relationships, and opportunities from a fundamentally different internal state, one of clarity rather than panic, of discernment rather than desperation. Many people find that after consistent practice with grounding, frequency-based work like this, their outer life does seem to shift, not because reality has been magically rearranged, but because they themselves show up differently, more attuned, more patient, more able to notice opportunities and make aligned choices rather than reactive ones. Whether you frame this through the language of manifestation, subconscious reprogramming, or simply well-documented principles of stress physiology and decision-making psychology, the practical outcome described by so many practitioners remains strikingly similar. Life tends to feel more workable, more spacious, and more aligned when approached from a regulated nervous system rather than a chronically activated one. As we move toward integrating this practice beyond just these 6 minutes, I want to offer something simple and sustainable. Consistency matters far more than intensity. A single session of frequency work, however powerful it may feel in the moment, is unlikely to create lasting transformation entirely on its own. But a few minutes of this kind of intentional stillness, returned to regularly, daily if possible, but even a few times a week, begins to compound. The body starts to recognize the pattern more quickly each time. The mind requires less convincing to settle. What once took the full 6 minutes to access might, over weeks of practice, begin arriving within the first 30 seconds, simply because you've built a reliable pathway back to this internal state. This is the quiet, unglamorous secret behind most genuine transformation, not a single dramatic breakthrough, but small, consistent returns to a practice that works with your body's natural intelligence rather than against it. So if this session resonates with you today, consider it not as a one-time experience, but as an invitation to a relationship, one you can return to whenever the noise of daily life becomes too loud, whenever you need a reminder of what stillness actually feels like beneath all the accumulated tension of simply being human in a demanding world. Before we close this chapter, I want to ask you something, because these frequencies are said to ripple differently depending on where they're received, shaped by the unique energy of the land and the people listening in that moment. So tell me, from which part of the world are you experiencing this frequency right now? Which country, which region, which corner of this earth is receiving this sound through you today? Leave a comment below and let this global circle of stillness take shape. Because wherever you are listening from, your presence here is part of what makes this moment whole.